The events of our film begin in Seoul, the capital of South Korea, in the year 2021. At that time, real estate prices were continuously rising, prompting the government to impose strict regulations on housing loans. As a result, people rushed to secure loans to purchase properties, believing it was their last chance before housing became unattainable due to greedy investors. Amid this crisis, we follow a young man named No, who rushes to meet with a real estate agency. Upon arrival, he purchases a villa, but is shocked to find that the apartment's price has increased within just a few minutes. The agent informs him that many people are scrambling to buy the unit, and convinces him that he must act immediately or lose the opportunity. Overwhelmed by the fear of missing out, No decides to buy the apartment right away, just like many others who had become obsessed with real estate. To afford the apartment, No sacrifices everything he owns. He gathers all the savings he had accumulated throughout his life, takes out a large loan, uses his retirement bonus, sells all the cryptocurrency he owned, and even sells a piece of land he had inherited. All for an 84-square-meter apartment, which he believed would fulfill his dreams. He saw it as a new beginning for a better life, a property whose value would rise one day, allowing him to get married and perhaps get promoted at work. But things did not go as he had expected. We now move to August 2024, where we see No living a bitter reality inside his apartment, which is devoid of furniture and basic services due to accumulating electricity and water bills. He has been unable to pay them after draining his money on repaying the loans he took to buy the apartment. No wakes up in the middle of the night to a disturbing noise. The more he tries to ignore it, the louder and more mysterious it becomes. In the morning, he heads to work feeling deeply frustrated. On his way, he watches a video of an economic analyst affirming that real estate prices are expected to rise soon. The analyst advises those considering selling their apartments to be patient, warning that selling now would be a mistake they'd regret for the rest of their lives. He also cautions against continuing to pay high-interest loans while property prices are low. No arrives at his workplace, where he is surprised to find his colleague CEO has sent a message inviting everyone to breakfast in celebration of his retirement, having made massive profits from his investments in cryptocurrency. At that moment, the manager approaches No and begins mocking him, saying that the economy is collapsing because of investors like him, people who take out loans they can't repay, and pour them into the real estate market. No responds, explaining that he didn't buy the apartment for investment purposes, but to live in it. Yet the manager mocks him again, saying, "Even the apartment you live in is in a poor neighborhood," and adds that if No had worked harder and earned a promotion, he could have afforded a better place. That evening, No returns to his apartment and finds a note on his door from the neighbor living below, asking him to stop making noise because her children can no longer concentrate on their studies. When he enters his apartment, he realizes the annoying sound is still there. He calls the maintenance office and asks them to speak with the neighbor above to stop the noise, but the maintenance worker tells him the neighbor's phone is out of service. So, No asks the worker to go upstairs himself and speak to the neighbor. He also begs him to inform the downstairs neighbors that the noise isn't coming from his unit, since they're used to leaving negative notes on his door. The next day, No works as a food delivery driver to try to make ends meet. When he returns home, he finds yet another note from his neighbor stuck to the door. Inside, he tries to reduce water usage to save on costs. But as he sleeps, he's once again awakened by a noise that resembles a vibrating phone. Suddenly, he notices a strange movement behind his apartment door. It turns out that it's his neighbor leaving another note. He quickly opens the door, startling her and making her step back. No approaches her, apologizing, and asks her what exactly she's doing on his doorstep. His neighbor tells him that her daughter is in her final year of high school, but still behaves as if she's in middle school, and that the noise is disturbing them and affecting their ability to study. No insists that he's not the source of the noise, and that he too was awakened by it. She replies that her husband is certain the sound is coming from his apartment, and demands that he stop disturbing them. However, she grabs the door of his apartment and says the noise is only heard when she stands inside, then threatens that her husband won't hold back if he confronts him. 13 and 08. No feels scared and assures her that the noise is coming from the apartment above. Moments later, the neighbor suddenly enters his apartment and notices the sound has stopped. She accuses him of mocking her and hints that, because they are renters, he doesn't take them seriously, unlike property owners. Feeling tense, No decides to go upstairs to his neighbor Jin's apartment to investigate the source of the noise. Jin tells him the complaints began only after he moved into the building a month ago. He admits the noise is disturbing, but claims he doesn't know where it comes from. No is surprised when Yoon arrives and informs him that the maintenance office called her and confirmed the sound is not coming from his unit. She tells him she knows he's going through a rough time because of the drop in housing prices and advises him to be patient, pointing out that he's still dealing with the stigma after his loan application was denied. No begins to seriously consider Chang's suggestion about investing in cryptocurrency. He starts tracking the prices and realizes they are indeed rising, which pushes him to decide to sell his apartment. But he is shocked when the knocking sound returns. He discovers that his downstairs neighbors are watching him through their phones. He goes outside to monitor them from the street and runs into one of them, who tells him about a nearby building that experienced similar incidents, which ended tragically. That evening, while eating, the noise returns again, coinciding with a sudden crash in crypto prices. He breaks down and starts pounding on the floor in frustration. Just then, someone knocks on his door. He opens it to find a group of neighbors gathered, demanding to search the apartment of the man living below, suspecting he may be hiding something. No agrees to let them start with his apartment and asks the maintenance worker to check it alone, but Jin suggests they go in together to finish faster. As the noise intensifies, No excuses himself, saying he has an urgent matter and promises to return. A police officer asks him about the source of the sound. Embarrassed, No admits he doesn't know, and the officer tells him he should be certain before accusing anyone. He and Jin head upstairs to the top-floor apartment, but it turns out the sound isn't coming from there either. Finally, he goes to the very top floor, where the building manager, Yoon, lives. She welcomes him with a smile and explains that the walls are connected in such a way that sound travels between floors, making it impossible to identify its exact source. No tells her that his neighbors keep leaving him disturbing notes. She then reveals that she owns the apartment beneath his and promises to evict them soon. She affirms that it's her duty as manager to remove any suspicious tenants and asks for his cooperation. No responds that he understands, but he doesn't feel like a true owner until he finishes paying off his loan. On informs him that the opening of the high-speed rail line will lead to a significant increase in real estate prices, which is why it's crucial to avoid any problems in the residential complex. No assures her that he'll endure anything for the sake of the complex. Later, No receives money and food from On, which surprises him. Then, he discovers that his bicycle has been deliberately vandalized. The next day, he goes to the office and tells Chang what happened. Chang warns him not to let it happen again, and hints that he should report it to the police. However, they realize that filing a report might provoke the person responsible, especially if they are from the lead, an entity that seems to hold influence. The manager also subtly implies he doesn't want to get involved. Chang accuses the officials of having bought the manager's silence with money, but No responds that the money might help him pay his installments. Chang insists that this money won't change anything. He then proposes that they invest together in deep cryptocurrencies, currently priced low. At first, No gets upset, saying such speculation is illegal, but Chang pulls him aside and starts explaining the plan. No realizes he doesn't have enough capital, so Chang suggests taking out a new loan, which would allow him to buy the coins and pay off his debts once the prices go up. No is convinced by the idea, applies for the loan, then receives the down payment for his apartment, and rushes to buy the coins. He sees the prices dropping just as Chang had predicted, so he calls him and learns that Chang had already sold his share and made a profit. Chang warns him not to buy unless the prices rise by 815%, and once that happens, No makes his move. He spends the night monitoring the prices, feeling thrilled as they rise just as Chang predicted. His friend advises him not to sell until Liberation Day. No keeps watching the prices, finally feeling like he's about to break free from the bank's grip, holding his phone tightly. But that night, someone breaks into No's apartment, goes through his documents, and discovers he's speculating in foreign currencies. Then, No wakes up to the digital banging sounds again, and is surprised when his neighbor Jin knocks on the door, asking him to stop the noise. Jin enters the apartment, and the noise suddenly stops. No tries to convince him the sound is coming from the apartment below, but Jin insists that if that were the case, he would have heard it too, indicating the source is from No's apartment. No argues that his apartment is completely open, and the sound could reach any unit, but Jin remains unconvinced and warns him not to get into a conflict. Then he tells him about a murder case in a similar complex that occurred due to persistent noise, which led to a dramatic drop in property prices. He asks No whether this noise problem might lead to a similar outcome here. No tries to dodge the question, suggesting that children could be the source of the noise, but Jin hints that he knows No is the one causing it. No becomes nervous and leaves the apartment, fearing someone might attack him. As he reaches the elevator, he feels a moment of relief, until suddenly, his neighbor enters behind him and pulls something from his pocket. No is shocked to realize that this neighbor lives directly beneath him. By refusing to leave the elevator, No points to one of the neighbors, realizing that he wasn't just acting. It was truly getting worse over time. The noise and lack of sleep were putting immense pressure on him, especially with the cryptocurrency sale date approaching. One day, he suddenly wakes up to find himself in a new apartment, with his mother preparing breakfast and asking if he's going through a tough time. He tries to reassure her and promises to repay all his debts, including the loans she took out for him. But suddenly, his mother screams and tells him to stop the surrounding noise. At that moment, No snaps back to his real reality and is shocked to see the currency price surging while the noise grows louder, to the point that the walls crack and the floor collapses. But he wakes up again to realize it was all a nightmare, and he has only one day left until the sale deadline, where he is expected to make a 400% profit. The next day, the residents gather with the maintenance worker. The worker tries to explain, but it's clear he's exhausted from being silenced. One of the residents accuses him of invading their privacy. The neighbors grow angrier. No had believed the noise was coming from the neighbors, but eventually, it turns out there's a hidden device in his apartment, which raises suspicion. At that moment, On arrives and asks them to stop what they're doing, warning that their issues might affect the property value. The neighbors respond that they can't live because of the constant noise. On realizes that the drop in property value might indicate a deeper problem. Suddenly, On discovers that a neighbor from the lower floor has been recording everything. She asks if he plans to leak the footage to the media to reveal that no one can live in this building. The neighbor defends himself, accusing the downstairs residents of causing the noise since they don't pay rent. He also claims he's being watched and that every time someone enters his apartment, the knocking sounds stop. On asks him to allow them to search his apartment to make sure he doesn't have any speakers, but No insists the noise is coming from the lower floor. Suddenly, the maintenance worker discovers a device in No's apartment, shocking everyone. It's connected to a phone playing construction noises. No breaks down, trying to convince them that the neighbor planted the device. The neighbor walks up to him and says he was seeing a psychiatrist before all this happened. No angrily asks how he entered his apartment. He kicks everyone out, determined to record them as they leave. He tells Jin that the neighbor entered through the window and planted the device. The neighbor loses his temper and punches No, knocking him to the floor. No tries to defend himself in fear, while the neighbor pretends to be the victim. The police intervene and arrest No for assault. At the police station, No realizes he only has minutes left before the scheduled sale at 8:15. He begs the police to let him go, but they refuse until the doctor's report on the victim's condition is ready. He tries to hide the real reason for his urgency, his illegal investment in cryptocurrency. He asks for his phone to call his lawyer, but is shocked to find the screen shattered. He pretends he needs to use the bathroom, and when they remove his ankle cuff, he tries to escape, but the police catch him. At that moment, an officer steps out and asks about the commotion. No notices a computer in the officer's office and decides to lock himself inside to close his accounts, fearing losses due to greed. As the sale time approaches, No returns to the computer to complete the transaction, but is electrocuted and loses control of his nerves. He struggles and manages to hit the sell button at the last second. Later, On arrives and explains everything to the officer, who is shocked and helps bring No back to his senses. He apologizes for the violence and informs him that a building official testified that the neighbor started the fight. He hands him his phone and apologizes again. But No can't get over what happened. When he checks the time, it's 12:15 p.m. On his way home, he sees the neighbors celebrating because their apartment prices are expected to rise due to the opening of a nearby train station. Once inside his apartment, he opens his computer and is shocked to see he hadn't managed to press the sell button before the device shut down. He lost nearly 100% of his investment. That evening, he feels hopeless and writes a suicide note, apologizing to his mother, saying life wasn't fair to him and that greed destroyed him. Just as he's about to jump from the window, he hears banging noises and sees lights flickering on and off downstairs. He grabs a hammer and decides to go down to take revenge. There, he confronts Jin, who blames him for restarting the noise, leading to a fight between them. Jin defeats him and drags him into the apartment, where they both discover that the noise is still going on, and No is innocent. Jin finds a letter No had left for him and scolds him for not thinking about him. No responds that his future was ruined because of the neighbors. Jin suggests uncovering the real reason the neighbors cling to the noise, which impresses No and changes his view of him. They shake hands and decide to work together to uncover the truth. When they go down to the lower floor apartment, they find the door open. Jin asks No to look for speakers. Suddenly, the noise returns, but they discover the source isn't the apartment they're in. While searching the neighbors' documents, they are shocked to discover that the apartment's owner is someone named John, and his identity seems fake, as his papers say he was born in 2009. When they return to No's apartment, Jin is shocked to find out that John also owns that unit. No realizes they've been tricked. John has bought all the apartments on floors 13, 14, and 15. Jin says that what's hidden is even more serious, and it's likely that the entity behind the noise has bought the entire building. At that moment, No receives a call from Yoon, asking him to come upstairs to talk about what happened the night before. No asks Jin for help, then heads up to Eun's apartment. She tries to understand what occurred, especially since the neighbor is now in a coma. Shortly after, Jin arrives at her place, claiming he came to fulfill his promise to meet her. When she opens the door, No pretends to be looking for the bathroom, but instead starts searching the apartment for the source of the noise or any strange devices. No is surprised to find a gun and a fingerprint-activated door. When he enters the bedroom, Yoon's husband attacks him, thinking he is a thief. No tries to explain his presence, but when cornered, he begins to defend himself. It becomes clear that Jin's original plan was to get No out of his apartment in order to buy it cheaply. When No realizes Jin might call the police, Jin intervenes and pulls No out of the apartment. Later, No discovers that the phone connected to the sound amplification device in his apartment is now in his possession. He suspects that it is still connected to Jin's Wi-Fi network. No pretends that his own internet is down and asks for the Wi-Fi password, but Jin denies having a network. He then suggests going to a sauna to relax. There, Jin talks about his career as a freelance journalist, how he was injured while covering dangerous events, and how he doesn't receive the recognition he deserves. He explains that his current goal is to expose a massive corruption scandal in Korea. He suggests No join the investigation. No appears to agree, but secretly plans to use the situation to his advantage. After leaving the sauna, Yu sneaks into Jin's apartment and confirms that the phone is indeed connected to Jin's network. He takes photos as evidence and discovers a room filled with devices used to create the noise, along with documents proving that Jin gathered personal information about him to make him the target of his scheme. No also uncovers the involvement of Ono, the former building manager, in a bribery case related to illegal construction that violates environmental standards. It becomes clear that Jin has hacked all the building's security systems and can spy on the residents. He is planning to use No as part of a major revenge plot. No is caught off guard when Jin enters the apartment, so he hides and watches Jin editing videos to portray No as a dangerous individual, using the assault report filed by the neighbor to make No seem like a mentally unstable criminal. When No's downstairs neighbor arrives and attacks Jin, accusing him of causing her husband's coma, Jin claims her husband had requested an audio recording and was injured during installation. When she tries to attack him, Jin shoves her to the floor and tries to bribe her into staying silent. She refuses and destroys the recordings. In a fit of rage, Jin kills her with a hammer. After the murder, Jin continues with his plan to frame No, telling the police that No was the one who killed the neighbor. No runs, trying to escape. Later, Jin admits he plans to commit a massacre in revenge against the corrupt system, revealing that No's apartment was the perfect stage for the crime. He wants to turn No into a symbol of youth crushed by the system. No pleads for a chance to help in exchange for getting his apartment back. He proposes a media campaign, claiming that a former resident committed suicide because of constant noise complaints that led her to terminate her lease. Jin agrees. After completing the first phase of the plan, No carries the neighbor's body with Jin to Ono's apartment. There, he attacks Yoon's husband and ties him up. Jin reminds Ono that she was once a prosecutor who covered up corruption linked to the complex. No tells her that he was the one who prepared the investigative report and almost lost his life because of it. He explains that the hardest thing for a journalist is when their investigation is prevented from being published. He is shocked to discover that her husband Jin is the one who has been keeping the report hidden in one of the rooms. Jin pulls his wife, Yoon, away to close the door. In that moment, Yoon tries to convince No to help her. She tells him that she knows Jin forced him to do everything that happened. She also reveals that Jin might have killed the downstairs neighbor, and that helping her could be No's way to get rid of Jin. Meanwhile, Jin notices the notebook is missing and discovers that the room is full of cash. He asks Ono to bring him the notebook, but she apologizes and confesses to embezzling the maintenance funds, though she doesn't know where the notebook is. At that moment, Jin regains his composure and begins threatening everyone with death. No enters carrying a gun, intending to kill Jin, but is shocked to find that the gun doesn't work. Jin attacks him, accusing him of betrayal, but Yoon intervenes and strikes Jin with a gas gun. She then tells her husband to finish it. No pleads with her, but she slams the door in his face, telling him that everyone is already dead, and that he might end up taking the blame alone. No raises the bat in his hand and lands a fatal blow on Jin, killing him. Yoon becomes enraged and hits No, furious that he ruined the opportunity they had. She blames him for the chaos that ruined her plan, reminding him that all she wanted was to live in a peaceful neighborhood. Later, No wakes up in the hospital to find his mother beside him. He wonders what Jin had planned to do to him, calls him insane, and realizes that Jin wanted to end the crisis of cheap buildings in his own way, because the noise doesn't come from the walls, but from people themselves. Yoon approaches him and tells him that the noise is the reason for the rise in apartment prices, and that people like him will never be able to afford housing in this situation. She admits she had planned to kill Jin, but No regains consciousness in time and manages to get rid of her. Jin asks No to bring gasoline to burn everything in the apartment. At that moment, No gathers his courage and finds the apartment sales contract among the papers. He decides to turn the gas, previously cut off by Jin, back on, then sets the computer and the contract on fire. Jin tries to stop him, but No refuses to obey, saying that everyone in that place was evil. He leaves the building and suddenly, a massive explosion occurs in Yoon's apartment. No imagines that the entire building has been destroyed. Later on, No goes to the public prosecutor's office, where the prosecutor asks him about the law office Jin was looking for. No replies that he saw nothing. The prosecutor comments that Jin was searching for something that never existed, and that's what drove him to commit all those crimes. Sometime later, No travels to a remote village to escape the pressure of the capital. One night, he remembers that he burned the apartment sales contract, meaning the apartment is now legally his again. He decides to move on and start fresh, realizing that the only thing left is a small debt makes him laugh, as it seems trivial compared to the disasters he could have faced had he kept the apartment.